Chapter 7. Bells on Their Toes. With Mother home, the girls' self-imposed ban on dating was automatically lifted. Anne and Ernestine went back into circulation, hopefully rejoining their beach crowd of previous summers. The competition was unusually stiff because there were about 3 times as many girls as boys. Most of last summer's crop of males were now in college and had summer jobs on the mainland. It was apparent that in order to get rings on the fingers, bells would have to be on the toes. Morton Dykes, besides being tall and good-looking, had bought a Hupmobile roadster to the island and had rented a motorboat. So he had long since been admitted, in fact, shanghaied, into the crowd. The group collected each morning before going into the water, in a hollow formed by 3 sand dunes, near the Cliff Beach bathhouse. Of all the sheiks encamped on the semi-secluded sands, Morton had amassed the largest and most eager harem. In spite of the manpower shortage, Anne at first wouldn't have anything to do with him. Anne may not have been a raging beauty, but she was no strain at all upon the eyes, especially in her new bathing suit. Also, there was a possibility that Morton had become tired of having a half a dozen panting females hurrying to strike a match every time he put a cigarette in his mouth. In any event, he did everything he could to get back at Anne's good graces. "I don't see why you always give me the cold shoulder," he told Anne one morning, sitting down beside her on the sand. "If I weren't a lady," said Anne, "I'd give you something that started from the shoulder, and the result would be even colder." "I don't see what you're so sore about." "Look," Anne whispered, "there are at least 15 beautiful women here who are dying for you to come and sit with them. Why don't you go make one of them supremely happy, and leave me alone?" "But I've just known them a few weeks, and you and I are old buddies." "My buddy," Anne said sarcastically. "You better shove off, buddy, before your mother sees you associating with the lower classes." "You mean on the boat?" Morton asked. "Listen, I've been wanting to tell you about that." "If you think there's anything to be ashamed of in a large family," Anne told him hotly, "you're a bigger wet smack than I think you are. And that," called Ernestine, who was sitting a few feet away, "would set a world record." "It wasn't your family," Morton insisted, dropping his voice so that only Anne could hear. "It was that loud-mouthed little fugitive from the old folks' home with a cat on his shoulder." "You're talking about the man I love," Anne warned. But the shortage of boys was acute, and she seemed to be weakening. "We're all crazy about Tom, and he's nothing to be ashamed of." "I hadn't heard about your father, and I had never met him, and I saw that man, and I thought, and Mother thought—" "I don't believe you better tell me what you or your mother thought," Anne said. "I don't believe I'd consider it flattering, and I have a strong feeling that Tom wouldn't either." "Let's forget it," Morton smiled. "Relax and have a smoke. Let's be friends, huh?" He reached for a package of cigarettes, while a bevy of females, who hadn't missed a thing, clutched for their matches. Anne looked quickly toward the top of the sand dunes to make sure none of her brothers were spying. "Okay, buddy," she grinned. "Light it up for me, will you?" He put 2 cigarettes in his mouth, chose among 5 blazing matches that were poked into his face, lit both smokes, and handed one to Anne. She took 2 long puffs and inhaled deeply. "That's the first cigarette I've had since I left Northampton," she said contentedly. "Tastes fine." She took another drag and inhaled again. Ernestine, whose mouth had dropped open, watched admiringly and enviously as Anne puffed away, expertly knocked off the ashes with her little finger, and finally flicked the butt over a dune. "I didn't know you did that," Ernestine whispered, sidling over to Anne. "You go at it as if you've had plenty of experience." "What are you talking about?" Anne asked innocently. "Go at what?" "You know well what I mean. Puffing away at the cigarette like a dope fiend. Didn't know you dissipated." "There's a lot of things you don't know about me. Besides, everybody smokes in college." "Can I have one?" "You're not in college." "Can I try just one?" Ernestine whispered. "I should say not. It's going to be bad enough when I tell Mother I smoke without having to confess anything about ruining your morals." "Anybody?" Ern asked loudly. "Got a ciggy?" "Let her have one," said Morton, who had heard most of the whispering. "Here, kid." He tossed her his package and a box of unused matches. "I seem to have left mine at home," Ernestine said. She took out a cigarette and tapped one end of it on the thumbnail of her left hand, as she had seen Morton do. Then she tapped the other end. She put it a third of the way into the center of her mouth and lit it. "Put that out," Anne said in her ear. "You're making a spectacle of yourself. You're supposed to smoke those things, not eat them." No one except Anne was paying any attention. Ernestine puffed without inhaling and took the cigarettes from her mouth. "That, certainly," she said loudly, spitting out flecks of tobacco that were clinging to her lips and tongue, "soothes my jangled nerves. Nothing worse when you run out of ciggies." "Ciggies," Anne whispered. "My cow." "What makes it do like that?" Ernestine asked, contemplating the brownish, unraveled end that had been in her mouth. "It's all coming apart." "You're supposed to hold it in your lips, not your tonsils," Anne said. "If you're going to smoke, at least wait until I show you how, and stop humiliating me in public." Ernestine thought there was merit to that suggestion. She placed the moist fag between her thumb and middle finger, optimistically took sight at the top of the tallest dune, and flicked. The cigarette shredded open and landed 6 inches from her hand, where she quickly buried it in the sand. Later that morning, on the way home from the beach, Anne told Ern she had started smoking about 6 months before, and had intended to break the news to Dad when she got home for summer vacation. After Dad died, she didn't want to add to Mother's immediate worry, so she didn't say anything about it. "Everybody smokes all the time at college," she said. "I didn't my freshman year, but it's hard to keep refusing them like a wet blanket." "Did you get the habit?" Ern wanted to know. "Sometimes," Anne admitted. "I'd get rid of a pack in a week." "It gets a grip on you all right," Ernestine agreed. "I believe I got the habit from the first one. I'm dying for another right now." "Ha, you might got the chewing habit, but I don't see how you could possibly have the smoking habit. You're not supposed to suck on them, you know." "I do now," Ernestine nodded. "Are you going to tell Mother about your smoking?" "Our smoking, you mean," said Anne. And then, imitating Ern, "I seem to have left my ciggies at home. Please don't ever call them that again." "What, are you going to tell her?" "I suppose so," Anne admitted. "Eventually. I don't like to do anything behind her back." She fished in the pocket of her beach coat, where there were a package of cigarettes Morton had given her, and a package of lifesavers she had bought at the bathhouse. "Meanwhile," she said, offering the lifesavers to Ern, "we better have a couple of these." At Mother's suggestion, the 2 older girls had moved their belongings to one of the lighthouses, so they could sleep later in the mornings. Mother thought they were so entitled to some quiet and privacy after being in charge while she was in Europe. In the lighthouse, Anne kept her promise that very night and taught Ernestine how to smoke. Ernestine was not a particularly apt pupil, but she had a strong thirst for knowledge. The girls used up more than a half of the package of cigarettes before Anne deemed her sufficiently checked out to solo. "And I want you to give me your word," Anne said, "that you won't smoke at least until you're in college." "You mean not for a whole year?" Ernestine asked. "No, sir. I couldn't make any promises like that." "Oh, 1 or 2 a week when you're out on a date or something might be all right. But no more than that, and not where Martha and the boys can see you." 1 or 2 a week would be fine," Ernestine agreed. "Just enough to soothe the cravings inside of me. We don't want to set a bad example. After all, look what happened when you saw me light one." "I promise," Ernestine said solemnly. The girls had kissed Mother good night before going to the lighthouse, which was within a few feet of the shoe. Ordinarily, Mother went to bed about 9 o'clock, read sleepily for half an hour, her only free time of the day, and then fell asleep. She usually got up at 5:30 or 6 in the morning to be with the younger children. That night, for some reason, she had been restless. Reading hadn't made her sleepy. She was lonesome and wanted company. All the younger children had gone to bed, but she saw from her window that streak of light coming from under the door of the lighthouse. So Mother put on her bathrobe and slippers and headed for the lighthouse to chat with the girls. Mother thought the children were entitled to privacy just as much as adults, and never went busting or tiptoeing either to anyone's rooms. So while several feet away from the lighthouse, she stopped and called softly, "Girls, Andy, Ern, Yoo-hoo, it's Mother. May I come in?" There was no immediate response from the interior, where the girls were ducking out their cigarettes, hiding the ashtray under Anne's bed, filling their mouths with lifesavers, and waving towels trying to get some of the smoke out the window. "It's Mother," she called again. "May I come in?" "Come in, Mother," Anne called heartily, going to the door. "I thought I heard someone calling before, but I wasn't sure." Mother started up the steps and into the lighthouse, which was blue with smoke. I wasn't sleepy, she explained, and I saw your lights on, and I thought I'd just come up for a visit if you two weren't too tired. I really haven't had a good chance to talk with. By then, the full impact of the smoke hit her as she entered the door, and she coughed. Something's on fire, she shouted. Don't you girls smell it? No, it isn't, said Anne. Something was on fire, but it's out now. Oh, whistled Mother, settling down on Ernestine's cot. Scared me half to death. What happened? Well, Anne blushed, I may as well tell you now. I've been smoking. I was going to tell you about it. I was going to tell you tomorrow, or the next day anyway. Oh, smoking, said Mother. So that's it. She choked and coughed. Why, there's enough smoke in this room to nominate Mr. Harding. I've been smoking too, Ernestine said miserably. I was going to tell you too. It's my fault, I guess, Anne said. I taught her how. It was obvious Mother didn't like it. Her first impulse may have been to weep, to protest, to implore, and to scold. But she knew that what she was going to do was an important future relationship with the girls. So she didn't weep, and she didn't say anything until she had taken time to think the matter through. In my day, she finally began, nice girls didn't smoke. I know that's all changed. It's a mistake for me to look at it in terms of what was right in my day. I still don't approve, and it wouldn't be honest for me to make believe I do. You make me feel like a dog, said Anne, almost in tears. If you want, I'll promise never to do it again. I don't approve of promises like that, Mother told her. Most people smoke nowadays, and it's not right when parents make children promise not to do things that most people do. Besides, she might break the promise, Ernestine put in. These ciggies get a terrible hold on you, Mother. When did you find that out? Mother asked with some concern. Today, said Ernestine. Ah, that's not bad then, Mother smiled. Maybe you can even break the hold, for a couple years anyways. I could fight against it, Ernestine conceded. I've been trying to think up some good argument against smoking, Mother said, but when you analyze them, they don't seem too convincing. She started to enumerate the arguments, counting them off on her fingers. If you smoke, you'll have a bad reputation. I hate to let that one go, but I'll have to admit it doesn't apply anymore. It's a shame, too. It's bad for your health. Well, that's open to debate. Not so bad as overeating or not getting enough sleep. It stunts your growth. I doubt it. And anyway, you're both growing. It's a filthy habit. It's not really. Not half as filthy as gossiping or collecting old matchboxes. It's expensive. There, Mother beamed triumphantly. That is a good argument. It is expensive. And can we afford it? We don't buy them, Anne said. Our dates always have them. There goes my last argument. Mother smiled, spreading her hands. We'll just say I don't like it, but that's prejudice. I don't believe in prejudices, so go ahead and light up if you want to. Anne fished the cigarette and ashtray out from under the bed and offered one to Ernestine. Not right now, said Ernestine, whose throat and stomach was beginning to feel uneasy. I believe my craving has been satisfied for this year. Probably till I go to college. Anne helped herself to one, lit it, and blew self-conscious smoke rings at the ceiling. Where's your manners? Mother asked. Aren't you going to pass them around to everybody? It looks as if it might be fun. Oh, no, sir, Ernestine protested. Oh, no, you don't, said Anne, putting the cigarette package behind her back. I have led one member of the family astray today. I'm not going to be responsible for anyone else's downfall. Reluctantly, Anne stubbed out her smoke. That's my last, if you'll excuse the word ciggy, until I go back to college, she declared. The first thing you know, Jane might be smoking cigars. I believe it's safer to smoke in a nitroglycerin factory than around this house. With Morton at her disposal, Anne's social life was pretty well taken care of for the remainder of the summer. She still didn't like him very well, but nothing better came along, and he did have a hutmobile and a motorboat. Ernestine searched diligently, but didn't find a man until a week before the summer was over. Then she kept him a dark secret. His name was Al Lynch, and he had a summer job down at the grocery store, where Ern had met him when she did the shopping. He was a big-hearted, loud-talking, and collegiate, a little too collegiate. He wore a woolly crimson sweater sported a green block S letter, and bejeweled fraternity pin as big as a 50-cent piece. All of us had seen Al at one time or another in the store, and he was not the sort of chap that one would easily overlook. Of all the sheiks on the island, His hair was the greasiest, his trouser cuffs the widest, his fraternity pin the biggest, his football letter the flashiest, and his sweater the loudest. He wasn't exactly handsome, but his features were perfect, and he was sure he had a way with women. We knew Ernestine was dating somebody that last week because she had deserted Anne's beach crowd and spent hours rolling her hair up after supper. But she didn't go out at night, and he never came to call. We didn't know until later he worked nights checking stock, but had most mornings off. Morton and 4 or 5 of Martha's ever-present and ever-neglected beaus were on the dock to see us off to Montclair. This time there was no funny business about half-fare tickets with Mother in charge. Tom, Frank, and the pets had left a couple days before, so Tom could get the house open. Anne allowed Morton to peck her on the cheek, which Mother pretended not to notice. Martha shook hands with her boys and even condescended to clap them on the back. Then we noticed Ernestine and Al. They were holding hands, both hands, and looking deep into each other's eyes. The green S was still sewed securely to Al's crimson sweater, but the fraternity pin was gone. Ernestine finally tore herself loose from him. Agnes Ayres, taking leave of Rudolph Valentino to return to the old bleacher she was forced to marry because of his money, never played the scene any better. "Wow," shouted Bill. "Look at the hot dog in the sweater." "Ain't that the boy who works at the grocery store?" Mother asked Anne. "How long has she been going with him?" Halfway up the gangplank, Ernestine turned around, ran to Al, and flung herself into his arms. Miss Ayres never played that scene any better either. Even Mother was too surprised and shocked to make believe she hadn't noticed that. Ernestine tore herself loose again and ran radiantly up the gangplank. "I don't think that sort of thing ought to be done in public, dear," Mother admonished her when they were safely aboard. Mother seldom took any of us to task before the other children, but it seemed time for an exception now. "Or in private either," Anne agreed. "The idea, a girl your age." "I know it," Ernestine said, throwing back her head and looking at the clouds. "I didn't intend to do it. I tried not to do it, but there was something like a powerful magnet pulling me back to his heart." "Oh, so that's what the green thing shaped like an S is," Anne scoffed. "A magnet. Does it light up?" "Jealousy," intoned Ernestine, still looking at the clouds. "Ill becomes you, you unfortunate wench, whose troth is all but plighted to a beanpole." "Becomes me ill is right," said Anne. "Me becomes very ill, sick to my stomach." Mother shooed the younger children away. "I'm sure he's a lovely boy," she told Ernestine. Anne hooted. "You can tell he thinks he's God's gift to women." "You just can't bear to see your younger sister engaged before you, can you?" Ernestine snapped, coming down from the cloud and looking Anne squarely in the eye. "Engaged?" Mother almost shouted. "Do you mean to tell me that you and that... I'm sure he's a lovely boy," she repeated quickly. Ernestine pulled back her topcoat, and there was the fraternity pin. "I never saw such a big one," Anne admitted. "If you had another just like it, you wouldn't need to wear anything else above the waist." "What's the fraternity?" Tau, 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 Ernestine said proudly. "Never heard of it. And what is the high school is the S for?" "You know perfectly well it's not for any high school," Ernestine hollered. "Make her stop, Mother." "Sometimes I think I can't make any of you stop anything," Mother sighed. "Excuse me," Anne said. "What institution of higher learning is the 2-foot S stand for?" "Not that it's any of your business, but Al is 21, and he's a junior at Saigon Agriculture and Technical College." "I suppose you have never heard of that?" "Did you?" Anne asked. "Everyone knows about Saigon Agricultural, just because it's not full of snobs like Amherst, Harvard, and Princeton." "A Tau, Tau, Tau at Saggy, said Anne, shaking her head. "Saggy, it's got kind of a catchy sound, sort of a Indian, and sort of like a fat woman who needs a corset." "I think," said Ernestine, bursting into tears, "that you're the most hateful person in the world. I really do." "Gosh, can't you take a little kidding? You and Martha both have the time of your lives all summer," said Ernestine, sobbing. "And finally... "I'm sorry," Anne choked, putting her arm around Ernestine's waist. "After all, as you say, Martin isn't any rose. He's sure a beanpole, and Al is cute, all right. I've got to admit that." Do you really think so? Said Ernestine, blowing her nose. Gosh, yes, Anne fibbed. Where does he live, dear? Mother said. In Upper New York State. Why does everything happen to me, Mother? She sniffed. Just as vacation is over, it has to happen to me. Now I won't see him again till the Christmas holidays. Christmas holidays? Mother asked. I'm going to meet him in New York, Ernestine said. He's coming down specially. Maybe he could visit us during the holidays, Mother suggested. Could he? Ern shouted enthusiastically, hugging Mother. Do you think he could? I don't see why not, Mother said. After all, if you're going to marry him, I'd like to meet him first. Oh, I guess we'll never get married, Ern said gaily. Just engaged. Al says he's not the marrying kind. Al says why buy a cow when milk's so cheap? Why, where does he think? Anne began. It would be fine if he can come, Mother interrupted. Much better than you meeting him in New York. He sounds, well, very interesting, dear. Gee, he sure is, Ernestine agreed. Will you loan me your pen? I'm going to write him right now and invite him. Ernestine went into the lounge, and Anne and Mother exchanged knowing glances. Do you know what I think? Anne teased her. I think you're a scheming woman. I can see right through you. I don't know what you're talking about, Mother grinned sheepishly.